Alrighty, this installment of the this refret is taking me a little bit longer to do because I run into an issue with my camera earlier, and it quit working on me on the on this step, and I didn't realize it, so I had to get another neck ready to work with. So this is a different neck than the one I was working with, but only on this filing the edges of the ends of the frets. The rest of everything that you see in this video is the actual neck that I was working on before, the Strat neck from 2000. This one is a no-name Telecaster neck that I hated the frets on when I got it, so I decided I'd just go on ahead and yank those out and refret this one with the same frets as the other one. It's exactly the same as far as the fretboard goes. It's a solid maple fretboard. It's a 9.5-inch radius, and it's the same Super Jumbo 58-118 frets by Jescar, stainless steel. So everything that I'm doing on this one is exactly the same way I did it on the other one. So let's just go ahead and get started on this. The tool that I use for this is a filing block that I picked up. I believe I picked this up on eBay. It's 25 degrees on one side, it's 90 degrees on the other side. 90 degrees for filing the ends of the fret sprout off after trimming them down. One side, the other side, then I flip it over. Once I get those really close, once I get those, then I go to the 25 degree, and I just knock the tops off of them. Maybe half the distance, half the height comes off on the bevel. And the reason for that is, since I'm doing the round over on these, or on this very slight beveling will save my other tools later, and it'll also save a lot of time, so when I get to those stages. So you'll see what I mean when I get to that later in the video here. So first things first, we're going to take a 90 degree cut on this. Like I said, it's just a file, and this one is not a safety file on the edges. It is just a cut down file that's clamped into this block. Same thing with this one. It's another piece of the same file clamped into this block. It is beveled, so it'll slide over the ends of the frets better though. So here we go. Okay, this tape does two things for me. One, it protects the finish on the neck, which we already know it's going to do that. Two, when I'm doing this step, I use the tape as a guide. When I just barely start to see let's see if I can get this down to where you can see it. When I just barely get to where I can start seeing some chafing on the tape, like right here, I know that I've gotten my frets right where I want them as far as the length goes. So I've got a couple others that are still a little bit high yet, but I will go on ahead and set this up, or touch those up real quick, and then go to the other side of the neck. There it is. Alright, now it's time for the 25 degree beveling. So, like I said, just off the tops of it. It doesn't take a whole lot with this to do it the way I do a fret job. Okay, now that the ends of the frets have all been filed flush with the edge of the board, they've been slightly tapered. I'm going to go across with my fret dressing file and round them off a little bit, take the sharp edges off of them, smooth this up, clean it up, and get it ready for the leveling part. So let's go ahead and do this part first. So if you notice, when I do this, I use the round side down as much as I can. It has a round side, a flat side. I'll use the round side down as much as I can. And when I do it, I do a rolling around it as I file it. Start and work my way around to clean that up. And now we're ready for the leveling. Alright, next I need to make sure that the neck is perfectly level. I did do an adjustment on it earlier, but we'll make sure that there's no tension on the truss rod. Best way to do that I know is I use a notched straight edge. This allows me to fit over the frets and see if I have any tension on the truss rod and make sure that the neck is laying flat. Kind of has a little bit, it feels like, so I'm going to loosen the truss rod off so it feels good. Let's loosen it off a little more. And we should be good to go. So put that out of the way, get this out of the way. Alright, when I do the leveling, or do a leveling on these, I use 2 sanding beams and a diamond file. The 2 sanding beams these are going to be really close. I've already checked most of that. There's a couple of them that are slightly high. I want to make sure they're all perfect good. And then I'm also going to do a fall away, which is to make level or frets 13 through 21 a little bit shorter, so that you get better clearance in the upper registers. Best way to do this is you got to have a guide so you know exactly what you're working with. So take a marker, mark the tops of the frets. The marker allows you to see when all the frets are the same height. As soon as you get to the point where your lowest, your last fret no longer has any black on top of it, then you are now even. Use the long beam. When you go across your fretboard, keep in mind if you go both directions, you always want to stay on a uniformly radius board like this one. It's 9.5 inches here, it's a 9.5 inch radius here. Stay perpendicular, or stay parallel to the center line. If you're working with a compound radius, you want to follow the edges to the center line. But this one is a 9.5 inch, so we'll follow the center line all the way across. And then also keep in mind that when you go both directions, your center frets are going to get more wear faster than your end frets. So right now it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6th fret is still a little low. I've got a low spot on the 8th fret out here towards the edge, the 10th fret towards the edge, the 14th fret towards the edge. There's a little bit of a low spot still, it looks like, in the 16th fret, and then the 20th fret has a couple spots on it too. So we have to continue to keep going, but I need to get another piece of sandpaper, I think. Well, maybe I can get this one cleaned out. Now for the fall away. Doesn't take a whole lot, just enough to make your fret rocker rock just a little bit. Not there yet. There we go. Okay, next it's time to recrown these. I use a Hosco file that has a coarse thread and a fine thread. I go all the way across and I round them over just a little bit as I go across. So what this does, it also recrowns and re-rounds the fret all the way across. So start with the coarse, end with the fine. Okay, next it's time to recrown these. I use a Hosco file that has a coarse thread and a fine thread. I go all the way across and I round them over just a little bit as I go across. So what this does, it also recrowns and re-rounds the fret all the way across. So start with the coarse and with the fine. Alright, now that we have all of our frets trimmed even to the edge of the fretboard, they're level, they're crowned, the next step is where I really start to do things a lot differently than a lot of other people do. You can use steel wool to clean these up a little bit more if you want to. You're not anywhere near the rest of the guitar, you're not going to hurt anything with it. But the next step would be to clean up the file marks. Then after you clean the file marks, you polish. Some people use different grades of steel wool, some people use sandpaper. I typically will use a emery wheel on a Dremel tool. If you're going to do it this way, you got to know your movements, know how this thing works. You can really burn through a fret really quickly with this, even on the stainless. If you take a look at the wheels that I use, they're just the typical emery wheel that Dremel makes, but I concave the edge of it so that it actually rides right on the crown of the fret. And when I do this, it is a very uniform, constant motion all the way across. I go from the edge, across, off the edge, on the end, across, off the end. So, right across the top of it, all the way across, and it's a uniform movement each time. I know what again, this is just how I do it. It's what works for me. I run my Dremel at about 17,000 RPM, and just kind of, not real fast, just kind of work my way right across each one of them as I go. and the tool marks are now gone. Time for a polish. Polish wheel. This one's already impregnated with the polish on it, so we can get by with not having to put a whole lot on. This one I like to speed it up a little bit more. About 25,000 RPM. Now that we got the polishing done, it's time to peel the tape and take a look at the fret ends again, because I may have to touch up a few little corners here and there on this, because the tape is thick enough that you can actually feel a little bit of difference in it. So let's see what we got. There's a couple spots where, since this board is well rolled, it's kind of down a little bit underneath. The bottom side feels pretty darn good though. I'm not feeling anything on it. The treble side, well, a couple spots. But the rest of it, the top is where most of it's at, which really doesn't affect much play, but we're going to get it anyway, so. We'll go back to using the little file that we used for the dressing the ends, and we'll just get a little closer with this. This file is a Stuart McDonald 1175 file, made just for fret dressing. If you look at it, it is it's a file on this side, it's a file on this side. Each end is smooth. One side is rounded smooth, the other side is flat smooth. It allows you to be able to actually hook up underneath of it and take care of the contouring the fret to match the roll of the fretboard if it's rolled. Works really well. At least it always has for me, so just back at it again with the file. The only time I like to use the flat edge of the file on these is when I have to dig underneath of it just a little bit. The rest of the time I use the rounded edge. It allows me a little more leeway to move back and forth and not scar up the edge of the neck. When I do the flat part, like I am right here, if you notice I'm not going all the way down, so I'm not actually ever really touching the finish on the side of the neck. I'm just bringing the metal down at a bit of a taper to make it flush with the neck. And there you have it, folks. No more fret sprouts whatsoever, and this is the perfect time of year to be doing this too, because it's dry air. If you look, the frets are rounded over. If you're not used to it, when you first start playing it, you may feel the edge of the frets a little bit on your finger, but they're not jabbing you, they're not cutting into you at all. And then it becomes very, very, comfortable to play after a very short amount of time, because this is actually kind of how, kind of the same setup that Jackson uses on theirs with their great big frets. These are the biggest frets that you can get, and this is going to be one beautiful playing neck.